One thing that I thought was interesting is in your podcast, you mentioned a lot of people have like the Ron Paul moment, but for you, it was the Rand Paul moment. Can you explain that part?
His neighbor, I don't know if you guys remember, I think it was 2017 this happened. His neighbor attacked him viciously. He ended up in the hospital. He had to have surgery. He got a punctured lung, broken rib. It was awful what his neighbor did to him. And I found out, I thought, I live in Georgia, so sometimes old men fight in the yard. That's what happens. And I thought for sure this was just two old dudes fighting. And then I found out it was politically motivated, that this guy had attacked Rand Paul because of politics. I thought, gosh, this is awful. Like any normal human being would say, this is not how I want my ideas put out in the world. I don't want people attacked because they don't agree with me. And when I started to voice that opinion to my group, that was the thing that made them turn on me, by the way, was that I was supporting Rand Paul. Now, at the time, I was not the kind of person that would have supported Rand. Nowadays, sometimes I'm like, hey, this guy's got it. This guy's got the right idea sometimes. But back then, he was like, persona non grata. I would have never agreed with his politics, but that doesn't mean that he deserves to get beat up to the point where he's in the hospital. And when I was expressing this to people I thought were also, mature, thoughtful adults, it turned into, oh, well, you're supporting this and you're supporting Rand Paul, which means you're supporting racism, which means you're supporting white supremacy. And it really got that far, like very quickly. I'm talking 0 to 90. It was, oh, you don't want Rand Paul to be viciously attacked and put into the hospital? Well, that means that you support white supremacy. It was like unimaginably fast.
That's ridiculous. Just because you don't want political violence. Oh, that means that, you're a white supremacist.
Yeah, super fast. And you have to, it takes a long time to even be able to speak out in disagreement of what you think is right with these kind of people, because you have to follow the narrative. If you don't follow the narrative, you are open for attack. That's the whole theory now, is that you either are one of us or you're one of them. And that ideology, that specific group of progressive leftism, does not see anyone outside of their ideology as a person who should be protected from violence. They believe they can hit you, like straight up.
So basically, like punching Nazis, that's totally fine, which is hilarious.
But everybody's a Nazi.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. They don't make sure who they can punch are actually Nazis. It's, Ben Shapiro, they accuse that guy of being a Nazi and he's Jewish. I'm like, he wears a yarmulke. Are you kidding me?
Well, the thing too is that with like Richard Spencer being like basically the face of all that for a time, the funny thing too is that Richard Spencer is all, they say he's I guess he is actually a white supremacist or whatever, but a lot of his political, stances, whatever, are very left-wing and progressive, which is hilarious to me, with his whole,
it's just confusing.
Yeah, like environment. I mean, he was for net neutrality, just a lot of that stuff. And it's just, he does believe in a lot of the same things you guys believe in, yet because he likes white people more than everything else, punch him in the face.
Yeah, it's really interesting. They use him as the example because he has, opinions that I don't think a lot of people would agree with.
Right.
And those types of opinions, they don't have a lot of clout in our society. And the people who express them openly and frequently, they are reviled. And so you get to use that against people you disagree with. You get to say, oh, if I call you a Nazi, that means anything that you're saying to me is wrong and I am by nature right. As though for some reason, I'm just trying to imagine a scenario where a person who might have white supremacist beliefs is right about the topic, but also has white supremacist beliefs. It doesn't make them incorrect, like factually incorrect. You know what I'm saying? So we're turning our culture into a culture that says you're only right based on your ideological principles. And, of course, racism is a deeply unpopular ideological principle in our society. To express those ideas makes you a pariah.
Yeah.
So this idea that you're going to, unless you punch everyone who expresses one of these ideas, you're also supporting that idea is absolutely insane. It's just a way to give people permission to knock down ideas they don't agree with. It has nothing to do with whether the person's actually a white supremacist or not. If I say, that I don't agree with Medicare for all, that could be spun very easily into a person saying, well, you don't like the poor, you don't like this kind of people, that kind of people. Therefore, in the end, I spell it out that you're a white supremacist. But it has nothing to do with that. Of course, you realize, being also libertarians, that it's more of a financial argument than it is a ideological argument or having anything to do with race. But then that person can say, well, you who hates the poor, my ideas are better because you hate the poor. I mean, does that make sense? I feel like I'm kind of
the thing that going on that whenever they kind of just talk about race or emotion, whatever, especially like you were saying, Medicare for all or anything like that, whenever it's
any government programs.
Well, not only that, but anything like economic. It kind of makes you just automatically go, do you even know what in the hell you're talking about? Because with economics, I mean, I get it. For some people, maybe it's kind of hard to grasp. I know for me, sometimes I'm kind of have to I'm like I don't know what the right term would be, but sometimes for me, it's kind of hard for me to understand, because, I'm willing to admit, I don't know sometimes, if I'm what the hell I'm talking about or, or whatever,
it's
like
complex.
that. And I'm willing to learn too about all that stuff. But even like just recently, there was someone talking about how, you probably know what I'm going to say.
Are you talking about the rent thing?
Yeah, landlords complaining about their whatever. Get a real job, landlords. And my first thought is, well, that is their job. The landlord, that's the whole
providing the space for you to live.
Right. And with all this happening around us right now, and to me, I'm just thinking, well, do you even can you even think for a second, like if you were a landlord, right? Someone was coming to you, come in and say, I need a place to live. You say, okay, well, it's worth this much amount of money. And then that person says, okay, I'm willing to pay, I don't know, for example, $700 a month for rent. Okay, cool. Deposit $200. Great. I'll give you $200. And then after that, in a month or two, I'll give you $700 for the rent. Mm-hmm. But then that same person later on goes, that landlord's stealing my money. But you just said, you just approved of that exchange,
It's a voluntary agreement that you both participated in. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you don't, I don't know, for other apartments, you speak to a leasing agent. So I guess that leasing agent is the landlord, I guess, in this scenario. I guess that leasing agent is evil, even though you're like, I'll sign the paperwork and, okay, cool. Yeah, I agree with that. 1 year. Okay, one year, whatever.
But, that argument also goes back to, if you don't agree with what they're saying about the landlords, then, you just hate poor people. Because
you just hate poor people. Yeah. Exactly. I think the language of landlords is purposeful too, because in previous communist regimes, people who were landlords specifically were singled out as the enemy of the state. Right. So I think that people are bringing those writings back into popular culture, and these, college level kids are taking these ideas, not having the historical context behind them, and saying, okay, Marx tells me landlords are the enemy. And so I hear that language, and it's historic, it's repeated, it rhymes with history. And that disturbs me, because it's not as though those regimes haven't taken power in government before. It's not like we're not tipping in that direction. So I think the popularization of that kind of language, landlords being the enemy, when we saw in communist regimes them line people up who were considered landlords and dispensing with them. I don't want to get too graphic about it, but.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people on Twitter. I know it's Twitter, so it is like a hellhole already.
Well, not only that, but you can't take, because obviously Twitter's not real life, as Dave Rubin famously says.
I know,
it's a reflection, though.
Right,
Yeah, it's the, what do they say about the mirror? The reflections are closer than they appear.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that Twitter mirrors an aspect of at least the psyche of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good way
it's a way to look into people's minds. There are things that they wouldn't say necessarily to people in real life.
Yeah, I think that nails it.
Yeah. So we're kind of getting off a little off topic. That's great. I love the tangent sometimes, So kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier about your journey or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you were also mentioning too, you're listening to libertarian podcasts and books, whatever. The main one I know for you was the Tom Woods Show, which, I do I'm not gonna lie, I don't listen to every single episode, but I do try to listen to as much as I can, because obviously there's so many podcasts out there, so it's kind of hard to keep up.
Definitely.
You're not a real libertarian unless you have a podcast.
Well, yeah, that is true. So welcome to the club.
I know, I joined the ranks. I feel so good now.
Yeah. But for me, it kind of like warmed my heart a little when you said, oh yeah, Tom Woods is one of the main, if not the main reason why I became who I am now, because, going from, being a libertarian and anarcho-capitalist as well, is because, and I know you see it, I don't know if you engage in it or anything like that, but I'm pretty sure you see it. Wouldn't surprise me, but all the shit that he gets, you're a racist, you spoke at this blah blah, and blah blah, and all that, you didn't sign this paper saying you're not gonna.
Oh yeah, what was that about?
Yeah,
you didn't sign a paper.
So, like, when I heard that, I'm just thinking, here's a person and a woman too that went from being a progressive SJW leftist or whatever, who, like you said, I wouldn't have even thought twice about Rand Paul. I would have thought, evil, 100%, not even a split second. And now you're saying, yeah, Tom Woods is definitely an inspiration here.
Yeah,
I'm just like, so anyone who listens to that and will listen to this and hears this, they're gonna go, huh? Well, maybe Tom Woods does have a better grasp of things than my stupid dumb fuck that, like, well,
calls him a Nazi.
Called him a Nazi, and you know what I mean?
Well, I come from Georgia, so if being photographed in a room with the Confederate flag is a damning thing, then every school child who lived in Georgia between whatever year and 1992, when I don't know what year specifically they did away with it. I think it was actually more recent. It might have been the year 2000, but that they removed the Confederate part of the Georgia state flag. So that's every school child, millions of people who lived in Georgia who may have been photographed next to a Confederate flag. I mean, that's just something that exists in our daily lives, I can drive down the street and I see them. So I think that people have very different experiences when they come from maybe, major cities and things like that don't mirror the experience of the rest of the country. I have mixed feelings about the flag, of course, but that would be a lengthy topic for us to get into. But I don't think that it's damning to be next to one or near one or in the presence of one. And I don't think he personally went out and set them out on the tables. But I do know enough about, the kind of people that I used to associate with, that all it would take is that picture of him. He's standing at the podium, he's speaking, and then on one of the tables is this little Confederate flag sitting there. And that's just plenty of evidence. That's all you need. And that's deeply unfortunate, because Tom is a very wise and thoughtful person who has a lot of thoughtful things to impart, especially, being a little bit younger than he is. I learn from his experience. He's a college professor. Yeah. For him to benefit people with his experience and his vast knowledge for free, not to avail yourself of that makes you a fool. And of course I'm a fan, so I'm going to say nice things about Tom, but to use that very, very stupid thing to say that Tom Woods is a racist, even though none of the work that he puts out reflects that, none of the ideologies that he puts forward reflects the idea that he would be a race supremacist in any way. This man is the man who taught me about the freedom of the individual, and showed me writers who expressed those values and changed my life in such a way as that I feel that I own myself as a person, as opposed to maybe the state owning me, or, we are the state. That's always the thing. And I no longer believe that. So I owe that man a debt of gratitude for taking his, free time, basically. And I know he monetizes that and he makes money off of that, and he should. But for the most part, all of that information is freely accessible to anyone who will avail themselves of it. So as far as Tom Woods and the Mises Institute goes, I think they're heroes and I salute them.